with the recent Transformers Generations 2022 guidebook, there was a big interview with one of the godfathers of the Transformer world in Kōjin Ono. Kōjin Ono is best known, along with Yoke-san, as the two dudes who are behind pretty much all of the Diaclone and Microman product that would be most of our Transformers 1984 and 1985 line. If it's a key character from that era, chances are Kōjin Ono or Yoke-tron designed them. So Kōjin Ono right now is the guy who's the driving force behind the Transformers Masterpiece line. He's one of the developers. He's also the big driving force behind the Transformers MPG line, which is our big combiner line of masterpieces. Now, he sat down and he did quite an extensive interview, and I love a lot of the stuff that they talk about here because it really helps us understand why decisions were made, the directions that they went with those decisions, where Masterpiece is going, and just all kinds of other inside baseball kind of stuff that really helps us get a better understanding of what's going on with the Masterpiece line and what's going to be happening in the future. So I'm going to go through this interview. I pretty much kind of summarized it into key points. It was a very long interview. A lot of it I translated, and then I just took like the really important stuff that I feel would really matter to help us get a better picture. So what I present to you is the interview of Kōjin Ono with the back and forth. So the first question that was asked to him is, what does the G in MPG stand for the Masterpiece line? He says the G has a few meanings, such as gatai, which means to combine, great, or giant. So it has three meanings, the 3G, gatai, greto, and gianto. You'll understand why he kind of has three different meanings for that, because the line isn't only just meant for gatai and combiners. This is very interesting. Next up is, why did they start with Raiden instead of some of the more commonly known combiners? It says development for the Masterpiece started around the time of 2020. By then, Masterpieces had completely changed, and we wanted to increase the output of characters and designs while we were doing something new to attract different and new kinds of customers. One of the younger designers at Takara Tomy said, why not Raiden? It was a toy that was a version that was extremely popular during its Diaclone release, and even had a second release within Diaclone because of how popular it was in a different color scheme, and then later again was released in Headmasters and was very, very popular. Takara Tomy having a lot of success also with their current Shike Leon bullet train transforming line also led to them to kind of go in that direction. Not to mention, Western fans with Hasbro had never gotten a chance to truly enjoy those characters since they were, well, Japanese exclusive and quite expensive in the secondary market, and had not had a proper full team combiner re-release in any shape or form, be it the original toy reissued or that of a modern interpretation. So that's pretty cool. They said here, one of the only hurdles was that they had to meet with the JR for approval of the licensing, since its masterpieces were known for using real designs, and in this case, real train designs. For people who aren't familiar with what JR is, JR stands for the Japan Rail Company, which handles all the licensing and the designs of all the Japanese railways. They said here it was an easy sell for them on Raiden, since they had just had a meeting not too long before for Shike Leon, where they were already familiar with what we were doing and how they were respecting and handling the licensing of their designs and their trains. Once we got the approval, we decided to do individual releases instead of a six-figure box set, because we figured a six-figure box set would be way too expensive, and doing an individual release would be a lot more easier on the customer's wallet. We also decided to stick with the HO scale for the trains because of collectors and fans, since that is the most popular scale with train enthusiasts in Japan. We also worked with Tomy Tech, which was known as Takara Tomy's sub-company that is known for making all kinds of different trains and models and all kinds of stuff through their Tomix line of trains. What did you guys learn from working with Tomy Tech? First thing that we learned working with Tomy Tech is we learned that the Shikaisen, which is what Raiden, most of the Raiden pieces are based on, is actually not the same scale of train as the traditional trains that exist within the HO scale. And thus, if they wanted to have a true scale, it would not work with the HO scale. So they had to modify it a little bit so that everything would work together. It's kind of a 1/87 scale, more or less, but nothing is a 100% in scale with one another, but it is pretty close just to get everything to match. Then they ask here, any stories around the time of 1987 with the Headmasters anime and the Headmasters toy series? And then he says here, at the time we had used all of the Diaclone and Microman designs that were released, more or less. A few were obviously left out, but the development had slowed down around that time of 2010, which was 1986 season 3 for America. I was asked to make some new designs and drew up some ideas. One of the designs that I drew up was a head that transformed into a robot. I was inspired by my favorite robot, Kotetsu Jig, also known as Steel Jig, which was actually what was the inspiration for Wheeljack's head. And of course, Kōjin Ōno designed Wheeljack for Diaclone. I submitted it to Hasbro, and they said they liked the idea, but you should broaden the item a little more, and that's what led then to Target Masters, Power Masters, which at the time I called Engine Masters, and even down the road what led to be Micro Masters. There was a lot of stories to be told with these mechanisms and gimmicks, a lot of lore, a lot of explanation, a narrative for the robot personalities merging together. It widened the view and concept of what Transformer lines can do and what they could be within the world. So that's pretty cool, actually. Just, how gimmicks kind of gave birth to the idea of Transformers could be more than just robot to car. And I like that. What was the story behind Diaclone train bots in 1987's Headmasters line and anime? Why were they introduced then? We had no plans to bring them overseas, considering they were a Japanese-only market at the time. As I said before, they were very popular during the Diaclone run and even saw a second release in different colors due to that popularity. We had a feeling that if we released them again in 1987 with the Headmasters anime, that they would sell very well. Looking back at the anime, he didn't play a big part in the show in terms of the story. We had Fortress Maximus and the Headmasters that were the main products of the line and focus, so we figured he would probably get lost in the shuffle. But he sold just as well as any other figure in the line, and maybe it had to do with that train motif and how much Japan loves trains, or that Raiden was shown fighting and combining in the opening of every single episode of Headmasters, and fans had to watch that every single time. Maybe that had something to do with that. And then it says here he laughs out loud. They ask here, what is the future of the MPG and Masterpiece line? He says right now, Shuki sold very, very well and was well received by fans. We're doing the finishing touches on Suiken right now, which is the green and orange Tokai type 153 express locomotive, and we are starting the designs on Senzai afterwards. That will be the yellow and red Hachicho 585-200 series limited express electric locomotive. It took a while to develop Raiden, but technically he should be finished by the year 2022 is over. So that's good news. They're moving along quickly. It looks like they're already down to number 4 of 6, so they're almost done. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have a few more questions. Would you do any of the variant colors like how you did back in Diaclone with the second run of the Diaclone figures of the train bots? I can't see us doing what we have normally done with the Masterpiece line, like silver versions, evil black repaints, or even clear versions. Imagine a clear diesel locomotive. Again, he laughs. But I imagine we could do a one-shot, like Dr. Yellow. Yuki Oshima will include one new female Autobot in the Train Wars Origins manga. That one we could stick in its original rail train colors. Otherwise, it's not easy to do that way. We want to stay true to the designs and decos of the trains, and we don't want to go off with weird colors. Now, what he mentions here, actually, because at this point in that book, we already have the first chapter and the second chapter of the Train Wars Origins manga, and Dr. Yellow, the female train bot, does debut in it, so chances are we might get our Masterpiece Dr. Yellow at some point as a one-shot. So that's pretty cool, that female train bot. making her debut. And the last thing we have here, final thoughts, and this one's very interesting. Final thoughts for the Masterpiece line and the future. We had just finished Trailbreaker, and the number of Autobot cars is really starting to shrink. The question is what will turn into a Masterpiece next? The Transformers Legacy line is doing a good job being animation accurate, and it's annoying how good it is at doing that. And again, he laughs out loud. I personally would like to make the Pretenders, especially Metal Hawk, since I had made the original Metal Hawk back in 1988, but that is a tough one and is very hard to get approval from the rest of the Takara Tomy team. If they have to do another MPG, it does not necessarily have to be a combiner, since we also have Great Giant in the Gs. I was hoping that maybe we could do Omega Supreme, and they could include more minifigures like we did with the Masterpiece Skyfire. An interesting fact about the minifigures, at one point when we were developing those, we wanted to make them small but also transformable and make them the smallest transformable robots, but that was not possible within the design. But at least we were able to keep the shape and design of the minifigures, and the Optimus Prime minifigure that's included with Skyfire is actually a shrunk down version based on the MP44 Convoy 3.0 in shape and scaling. So that's pretty cool. And that's it more or less for it from Kōjin Ono. So a lot of cool stuff that they mentioned there. Again, he would love to do Pretenders. I would be so down for that if we could have a really cool Masterpiece Pretender shell Metal Hawk with a Masterpiece Pretender shell. Oh my goodness. I mean, the way I look at it is Masterpieces should really focus on kind of their Autobot leaders anyways. We got Convoy, we got Rodimus. I mean, Fortress Maximus is kind of a tough one because of scale, but we got Star Saber. At some point, maybe they'll do a God Jinrai. At some point, maybe they'll do a Metal Hawk because he was kind of a pseudo, Supreme Commander, second in command, so I could see him being done. Maybe a Diatlas at some point, maybe a Star Convoy in the near future. Who knows? But I would love to see. I would love to see a Metal Hawk. Interesting stuff. Even the mention of MPG doesn't have to be combiners. That it could be just giant characters. We could get MPG Omega Supreme. That's crazy when you think about it, considering the Omega Supreme we got in Titan class. What would a Masterpiece one be? We look at our Commander class Skyfire, Jetfire, and then we look at our Masterpiece one that's coming that towers over him. How big would an Omega Supreme Masterpiece be? That's crazy. Maybe Unicron might not be the tallest Transformer ever from HasLab if stuff like that continues with the MPG line. Like Simon Furman says, it never ends. This is crazy. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think. Very interesting interview. I hope you took something away from it, and I hope it gives you a better idea of what the future of the Masterpiece line could be. Get your wallets warmed up and ready, because we're in for a bumpy ride for the next couple of years.